doing this as a video in a playlist. This is a mostly spoiler-free book review of a very big book I am taking on called Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. And it's definitely the biggest book that I've taken on in a really long time. It's a 61-hour audiobook. So even if you saw the 2-hour movie, you probably still didn't hear everything. And this is not everything. This is a lot of information. These are direct words and quotes that I found in the book that just brought it to my attention. I wrote them down. So this is what I heard when I listened. I'm not even done listening to the 61 hours yet, but I am into the 50th something hour. These are the words I heard. I heard sugar's very bad. It talks about 1815, a bishop. There's hospitals talking about a budget. Typhus fever was mentioned. Not only sick people, but also sick farms, wheat, blight on the wheat. It said parasitic. It said there was impotent men. People that thought themselves a gentleman. It's definitely about a woman named Fantine, and she has a daughter named Cassette. And this Fantine, I guess, dies of tuberculosis consumption, and then this little girl is adopted by a man who, was in jail. He went to jail. He was in a gang. His name was Jean Valjean, maybe you say it, because it is French. It's definitely taken place during a time in French. It was called a Paris uprising. Some kind of, definitely talks about some sort of industrial revolution. It said the prime functions of the state were nurse and school. It talked about the elegant name of the plebeian and the rustic name of the aristocrat. It definitely said, people were so there was this guy that, he was in jail, and I guess they were kind of judging him because he's running with a baby that they called the baby was probably a bastard. They said because the mother couldn't acknowledge. Talks about police spies. Talks about the mayor and the police. The words fatal things are in there. Condemnation, marauder, miscreant. The provincial tongue of the bar was no longer spoken. When women were called spouse. Okay, so that's interesting there. Okay, talks about stately fashion, reigning family, crucifix words in there. District is in there, attorneys is in there, theft of apples. There were talks about 8 years ago on a highway with a minor. There was a robbery. try to identify him. It seemed like a function of the judiciary was identification. Do we have the right? Is this even the right person? Because there's so many scams out there. Okay, talks about a grand sewer of Paris, friends of the ABC. Fantine died in the hospital. That's a spoiler. But I told you that. Cosette was the daughter. Okay, it also talks about, like, so it's in volumes. And volume 1 is called Fantine. Volume 2 is Cosette. That's the daughter. Then a fascinating story about Napoleon and the Waterloo and Orchard Brigade. 3 francs to explain the story of Waterloo. Like, they're like a museum, I guess. Like, talks about Louis the XIV. What is that? 13. And then also Louis XV1 and Louis XV111 and Louis XV. Talks about the English cavalry, Hercules, Polytech is in there, Hollow Road, I don't know if I wrote Battery or Barratry, Unmasked, Treachery, talks about to save yourself if you can, talks about the Prussian cavalry, talks about end of a dictatorship, barbarism from 1815, European Empire, winner of Waterloo, talks about liberalism, talks about reading, reckoning, and Latin, being 3, I guess, important subjects. Talks about a suicidal nun with a rope around her neck and a holy sacrament. Talks about a network of secret societies. Talks about an association of the Friends of the People. Talks about public and secret. It talks about Society of the Rights of Man and the Convent of Petit Picpus. Talks about parasites, soothsayers, the Bank of France, Devil's Treasure, something buried in the Abbey. Talks about to be a cop, you had to have piety. Talks about nihilism, that 0 doesn't exist, it was just something they made up. Talks about werewolf child, idiot or demon. Talks about electric shock. It's not what you'd expect in this really old book, but it's really big. Talks about imbeciles, water on the brain. Talks about the Latin Quarter and the Pantheon. Pillage. Divine right, legitimacy, theorist. This Jean Valjean, he was taken before tribunals for theft. He had a gun. He was breaking into a house. Talks about assassins of the town. Talks about a smuggler that lives in the mountains. And a poacher lives in the forest. Smuggler says mountains or sea. Poacher in the forest. Talks about, I guess, some 1832 June rebellion and insurrection in Paris. According to AI, that insurrection was the 1832 June rebellion was an anti-Marxist insurrection of Parisian Republicans. That's from here. Okay, from the book, though, we have more here about jewels from the cathedral. We also hear about children disappearing, cops carrying them off. We heard about Democrats, Great Pyramid, traitors, malicious, ridiculous, a cave of dreams. Talks about muskets, Harlequin in rags, children live in absence of affection. Mother Plutarch and enthrallment. Here's a quote: courage does not fear crime, and honesty does not fear authority. Alright, so like I said, the book's in 5 chapters. The first one was Fantine. Second volume is Cassette. The third volume is called Marius. The fourth one is Saint Denis. And the fifth volume is very big, is Jean Valjean. Somebody had an income of 4,000 francs. I didn't write it down, I'm sorry, but we got, they pawned the little girl's dress. They were treating her meanly. She was eating with the animals. That's Cassette. The people that were treating her bad was Madame Thenardier and her kids, Eponine, Alzium, and there was a boy. He wasn't so bad. He was a street urchin, and I guess this Madame Thenardier was like, she was the greedy wife of an innkeeper. So she's running the end. I don't know. Now, what's interesting, this is a spoiler, that there's something different between the book and AI, something between the book and the movie that I found on AI when I looked it up, because in the book, this Madame Thenardier, the greedy innkeeper wife who was a jerk to this little girl, dies in prison in the book. But I guess according to AI, in the musical, she doesn't. Now, I guess that was the musical. Maybe the movie, does she or doesn't she? I don't know. Sometimes I don't watch a lot of movies because the books really are much better. So, is that the only notes I have on that? I've also been working on the, you know what? I'll leave that as a surprise. But it also talks about peasants. There was a 1795 tribunal. There was against this poacher. There was a prejudice against poachers. And if I learned anything, it was 40 or 50 cows produce approximately 8,000 cheeses each summer. So that was a funny thing. I learned a bunch of words. These are the words that I had to look up. They were just words that you don't see very often. Orthography, consternation, occidental, jacquerie, that's spelled Jacquerie, my Mydons, Mymidons, and gendarmes, Gendarmes. Okay, so that's my word bank. When you read a book, I always have a little notebook to take notes if I want to tell you about it, and I write a word bank, and so every time I say a word that I learned, I write it down, and then I look it up. So have a great day.